Welcome back. A military court in the Democratic Republic of the Congo has sentenced former President Joseph Kabila to death in absentia. Kabila was convicted on various crimes, including treason, crimes against humanity, murder, sexual assault, torture, as well as insurrection. He served as president of the DRC from 2001 to 2019 and left the DRC in 2023, but recently visited the east of the country in an area controlled by the M23 rebel group. There was no immediate information about Kabila's whereabouts after the military's court decision. The ex-president went on trial in absentia back in July and has since denounced the case against him. Let's talk more about this with Professor Christopher Isike from the University of Pretoria. Prof, good to have you in the program this evening. So this is the first time in the DRC's history that a former president has been sentenced to death. What kind of president does this set for transitional justice and accountability, especially in post-conflict African states?
Well, good evening. Look, ordinarily it should be a good thing because we need to become more transparent and accountable in our governance in the continent. So ordinarily, this would have been a good thing for not just for DRC, but for Africa as a whole. However, the challenge is that there is reason to believe that the trial of Kabila in his absence and without any kind of legal representation may have violated, international legal norms, and especially the question of representation, especially when there is no certainty about, he's been notified to appear or not, is a red flag that raises questions around it, and also consider the fact that Mr. Kabila is a potential opponent of the current president. So there are indications also that this could also be, politically motivated rather than, born out of accountability, transparency, and probity.
Let's go back to one of the points you raised, and also given that Joseph Kabila has been sentenced in absentia without legal representation as well. To what extent does this then raise concerns in the region about the fairness and credibility of this trial?
It does. One is a military trial. There shouldn't be a military trial for this kind of case in a democracy. So that's an issue. And then also considering that there is a ongoing peace process between the government of the DRC and the M23 rebels, and it's the progress has been slow. There's been a lot of grandstanding on the part of all the actors against the spirit and letters of that peace agreement. But what this does is to even make it worse, is to make it slower, is to puncture it. And let's not forget that the M23 are currently have control of Goma, which is part of the DRC, and it could just escalate an already very fragile peace process that's in place.
Yeah. Some argue that this ruling may also derail that ongoing peace talks that you keep speaking about between DRC government as well as the M23 rebels in Qatar. Could this then, or this move rather, by Tshisekedi's administration, could it undermine the very negotiations it is committed to?
It does. In many ways it does, because if you are committed to a peace process, you cannot be prosecuting someone on account of being aligned to your so-called enemy, if you like, right? Because I say so-called because also we must look at what the Tshisekedi government itself has done or not done in terms of, good governance and inclusive citizenry. The question must be asked around why, in the first place, do you have, your own citizens of your own country choosing to align with a rebel movement that has a linkage with a foreign government, right? That's something to think about. Of course, we know that Tshisekedi was not the one that Kabila wanted to succeed him, but there was an agreement between them that held until when Tshisekedi also started removing Kabila's allies from his government. So, and this is not to say that Kabila himself is innocent. There are a lot of things that he has done that he should actually be accountable for. And actually, for me, there are worse ones than this particular case of treason, and because of his suspected alignment with the M23. There are a lot of abuses that happened during his time with corruption and also with human rights, grievous human rights abuses. Those should have been the reason for charging him rather than a suspected alignment with the M23 on account of his being in Goma in May of this year.
Professor Isike, how do you interpret the geopolitical dynamics at play here, particularly Rwanda's alleged support for the M23, but also the role of Qatar and the US in brokering peace deals in the Great Lakes region?
Well, look, that is one of the challenges of these kinds of peace brokered by especially America. We must ask the question of whether the substantive issues were looked at. But of course, it was Tshisekedi who approached the Trump administration to intervene with promises of giving unfettered access to critical minerals in the DRC. Preferred to do that than to sit down and negotiate with the M23 and ensure that there's peace in his country and to use those minerals for the benefit of the country. And this is the tragedy that the DRC has been since 1961 when Patrice Lumumba was murdered, right? While all the fighting has gone on, while there's been war in that country politically, economically, foreign interests and foreign powers have continued to mine the resources of that country. So that lack of self-awareness is something to think about. But the critical minerals are an issue that has attracted, that geopolitical actors. Now, whether these actors are working in the interests of the DRC and the people of the DRC is a different question completely.
There's also been talk that this sentence is politically motivated, an attempt by President Tshisekedi to eliminate a powerful rival ahead of future elections. How credible are these concerns?
Well, look, they don't have to be credible once you look at the simple fact that President Kabila has indicated an interest to run in the next election. So that makes him a political rival of the current president. And if suddenly you have his immunity, his presidential immunity removed, and then you have this trial in his absence and find him guilty so quickly, it speaks to the fact that it could be politically motivated. In fact, that's the singular reason why a lot of people, who, especially those that would have been sympathetic with the current administration in Kinshasa, do not express those sympathies because they see it as more politically motivated by someone who's wanting to, shut out his opponent and keep himself in power. And it's where in this era of politics where, like we saw in the US, where you go after an opposition leader and then, this public sentiment swings in his or her favor and they come back strong, is something to watch out for.
Kabila still commands significant loyalty, especially in the east of the DRC. Maybe let's speak to this dynamic as well. What risk does this sentence impose in terms of even inflaming political tensions or even sparking fresh conflict in that region?
It does. He's said to be from South Kivu, and all of those form part of the east. So it's going to actually inflame tensions there because, like you said, he has very strong political backing. Apparently, he's still very popular in the country, and all of this is coming on the back of Tshisekedi's failure to actually govern effectively and progressively. So that is there. That is something to look out for as well, apart from, of course, the potential for inflaming tensions with the M23 and what they can do in Goma.
And lastly, Prof, looking ahead, do you see this moment as a possible turning point for justice and accountability in the DRC, or is it more likely to deepen divisions and prolong instability in that region?
Well, it will deepen divisions because, like I said, the motive here is not really altruism or that of the interests of the state per se. It's more about, regime security rather than human security. It's high time, if the government was acting in the interest of the people, I'm sure it would have found better ways to deal with this matter without necessarily inflaming tensions in the country. So that absence of altruism on the part of the current government makes it suspicious, especially when you look at the fact that this was done in absentia, by military court, and without any kind of legal representation whatsoever. There are lots of issues around those, locally and internationally, that can spell doom. But if this was done with the right intention and appropriately, it would mean well for the continent in terms of governance, because at the bottom of these kinds of conflicts, like the one we see in the DRC, is the fundamental problem of governance. Which is, of course, linked to the perverse state formation in terms of how states or why states were formed in the continent, which we have not interrogated to date.
That was Professor Christopher Isike, is the director of the African Center for the Study of the United States at the University of Pretoria, helping us unpack the far-reaching implications of Joseph Kabila's death sentence, from the fragility of peace talks in the DRC to the broader geopolitical ripples across the Great Lakes region. He's been giving us his perspective on